Hi and welcome to another YouTube video. The new stuff pack Nifty Knitting just came out and I had the idea to build a house using every single item in Nifty Knitting. But there was one problem, and that problem was that all of the items in Nifty Knitting that you can make yourself through knitting or crafting, they are all separate in the catalog. And I wanted to make it extra challenging for myself and use all of the items that are separate in this build. And it would be challenging enough to build a house where you could make sense of placing, I think, 6 or 7 mailboxes. But then there are also about 100 different plushies and toys. And then there are the hanging plants. There are so many hanging plants, and I had no idea what I should do and what kind of build would have so freaking many hanging plants. And then I came up with a family, and I knew I needed a big family to have all of the room to use that many plushies and hanging plants and all of that stuff. So I thought there are maybe 2 elders in that family, like grandma and a grandpa, and they own this big lot and maybe have some farming areas and stuff. And then they realized, okay, they can't farm as much anymore and they don't need all of that space that their lot has, so they sold it basically, or not sold it, but just allowed the rest of their family and their son with his family to build a house on their lot. So there are basically 2 houses, one small one for grandpa and grandma, and then one bigger house where the parents live together with their teenager daughter, their child's son, and the 2 female toddlers that they have. And with that concept, I thought, okay, I will have a lot of different rooms in which I can place all of these different clutter items like the plushies and the hanging plants. And I have to say, this house really means a lot to me because it was kind of a journey, but in the end, I'm very proud of this build. And in the past few weeks, I've built a lot of houses and I didn't really like any of them. In the last few days, I posted, or a few weeks, I posted mostly creator sim videos because I was just building and I felt like my builds weren't good enough to show them. And yeah, I was kind of struggling with building and finding the motivation to build because I was watching a lot of building YouTubers and they are just so incredibly good at what they are doing. And I don't know, they are so creative and they create their own counters with little debug pieces that they put together, and it somehow looks just awesome, and the composition and all of it. And then there are these wizards with the terrain tool and all of that, and I just felt a little bit overwhelmed by all of these talented people because I felt like I couldn't ever be as good as them in building. And I was kind of questioning why I am even proud of my buildings, or why I am even showing them or sharing them on the gallery or with YouTube, when there are so many people out there who are just on a whole nother level. And then I just set my mind on this build in particular and thought, I'm going to take my time with it and yeah, make it as best as I can. And I won't measure it with the builds that somebody else is doing, but with, for example, my older builds, and want to see some improvement, and I want to challenge myself and, for example, use terrain tools when I'm landscaping, or like pay more mind to the clutter that I'm putting down. Like with this house for the grandparents, I, for example, placed down some medical supplies in the bedroom because that's just something a lot of older people need, or I give them something to read, or like a diary on their bedside tables. And also downstairs, where there is that little room with the knitting stuff, I not only have the rocking chair with the knitting stuff next to it, I also have a book of walls with a very comfy looking armchair, so that while the one grandparent is knitting, the other can still sit in the same room and, for example, read a book, even if they aren't interested in knitting at all. And now I'm working on the front porch of the bigger house, and I thought it was a really nice idea to incorporate some rocking chairs on that front porch, because it's just nice to knit outside, I guess, especially if the weather is nice. But I chose to use the rocking chairs that don't have a cushion on them, because I can just imagine that fabric getting very soggy if the weather is rainy. And I built this house in Brindleton Bay, so it's going to rain a lot, and because of that I chose the 2 rocking chair options without the cushions. And this dining area is another part of the house that I am very proud of. It looks very cozy, I think, and I'm pretty proud of it. And also you might notice that there are 2 like pet food bowls in there, and also one of the 2 closets has some dog treats in it, or just in general pet treats in them. But while I was imagining this family having some pets, I completely forgot that it is already a 8-person Sims household, because there are still the grandparents living on the same lot and they have 4 kids, so it's a full house and no place for pets. But maybe they want to prepare for the time when the teenage daughter moves out or something, and then they can finally get a pet. And now that I got to the living area, I kind of started to struggle with the furnishing a bit. I mean, I later also put a study area in this room, which I'm very proud of, because I made a shelving unit for this one myself. And yeah, it is a shelving unit that I am very proud of, because it looks kind of good in my opinion. And that was the first time that I experimented with, like, okay, there is no item in the game that has what I want. I'm just going to try to put different items together and just make it look the way I want it to look. But for the living room, the bar area and the kitchen, I don't know, I did everything that I did with the other rooms. I took my time, I tried my best, but it just didn't came out the way that I wanted them to look. And I think that ties back in with what I was saying when I was talking about watching these incredibly talented builders, and instead of being inspired by it, I was kind of demotivated by it. And I hope it's okay if I do a little bit of a kind of personal story time. But I have realized I had in the last few years a little bit of a shift in my mindset, because these kind of things, like seeing incredibly talented builders or incredible artists putting out phenomenal artworks that I would look at, it used to really motivate and inspire me when I was finishing school. Because when I was finishing school, I had this mindset of, if I just work hard enough, if I put enough time and effort into developing this skill and training hard enough, I can reach anything. I can get to that level. I'm not there now, but I can get to that level in the future if I work hard enough. And that worked out for me pretty great. I, for example, set my mind to wanting to study psychology. And psychology is a degree that a lot of people want to make. So to get accepted into the universities, you have to have very good grades. And I worked and studied really, really hard. And so my grades averaged on 1.3, which is like one of the best ways to finish school. And because of that, I got accepted into the second most prestigious university in Germany for psychology. And I was super happy. It was like 30,000 applies, and I was one of the 200 that were picked, and I was so happy. I thought I made it. But what I didn't realize was that I was in a degree and studying with people that are super intelligent, like that they look at a page and they don't forget what is on it, kind of genius. And my grade that I was accepted with was one of the lowest in that year of people. But only the 90 people with the best grades from that bachelor's degree get accepted into the master's degree. And that was a huge problem because that meant that I kind of had to compete with all of these other people for the best grades. And I worked so hard. I basically worked way too hard, but no matter how much time I put into studying, I couldn't get grades as good as these people. And at some point I just had to accept that I just can't work any harder, but I still won't get to their level. And I mean, it's all fine. I just now take 1 year longer for my bachelor's degree, and I passed every exam and also with kind of good notes, but they just weren't as good as the grades of most of these other people. And this whole experience kind of shook this belief that I always had that I could do anything if I just work hard enough, because there are just people who are more talented or have another capability for something than I have that I can never achieve no matter how hard I work. But that is with studying and studious things. But for my creative work, like drawing or building or all of that stuff, I kind of have to work now to get that old mindset back of, no, I don't have to be demotivated by seeing people who are better than me. That can still motivate me to get to that point, because studying and being creative and developing creative skills is something completely different, and they work different. And I think this house really helped me realize that and was an important step on that way back to the old mindset, because I am very proud of it. And even though I wouldn't say that it is as good as those builds that I have seen from these amazingly talented creators, I am still proud of it, and I still think it looks good, and I still see an improvement from my other builds or previous builds, let alone the last weeks. And because I see that improvement, I can improve further in the next weeks and months and years until I maybe someday can get to their level. I mean, I have played The Sims 2 and The Sims 3, but in those two games I have never built before. And even when I started playing The Sims 4, I didn't start building immediately. I mostly did gameplay and create a sim, and only really started building houses and focused more on building as a fun activity 2 years ago. And all of these people that I'm seeing, I don't know how long they have been building for. Maybe they have already started gathering experience in that in The Sims 1, 2 and 3 and all of that, or just earlier in their Sims 4 gameplay life. And because of that realization, I was able to be really proud, especially of the upper floor of the bigger house, because I think all of the rooms upstairs have a lot of character to them. Like the parents' bedroom, for example, it's all in this nice light blue tone, and there is this plushie on the dresser that is maybe the plush toy from the childhood of one of the parents. And there also is this piano, because in my mind it was the father of the family that plays the piano, but it can be the mother, or maybe there are two fathers, doesn't matter, but one of the parents plays the piano, and next to the piano is that armchair with that little poof. And I just imagine them having a nice evening where one of them plays the piano and one just sits next to them and just loves listening to them. And I just imagined that being the favorite place of these parents in this very full and cluttered house, where they can have a little romantic everyday moment in their lives between them, which is very important for a pair of parents that has 4 children, I think. And I thought this little part of this room was very cute, and also the room that belongs to their little boy that really loves green I like because it actually looks like a children's room. It has a lot of clutter in it and it looks lived in, and it is very crammed and full. Or the teenage daughter's bedroom, who has this nice bright and yellow teenager's room, which looks like a pretty average teenager's room. I mean, the time that you spend as a teenager is mostly about fitting in and all of that stuff. But I think she, on the one hand, has a huge passion, and in my mind she has a huge passion for surfing because she lives in Brindleton Bay and there is this very nice beach, and I think she would really love going out there and surfing and just enjoying nature. And also, while a lot of teenagers very despise everything that has something to do with their childhood and all of these cute kidsy stuff that is not their thing as a teenager because it's not cool, I think she doesn't care. I think she still loves cute things and still has a very emotional connection to a lot of the stuff that she has from her childhood, and that is something that I think kind of resonates in her room and which what makes me really like her. And then there is also the crafting room, of course, where I was able to just place most of the plushies in, because I imagine them really enjoying doing crafts together. And so they have this very successful Popsy page, and the whole family helps to make all these stuffed animals and all of the stuff that they are selling. And because of that, they have this little room where they can just craft together and have a place to store the things that they made for the future. And then with the upstairs complete, I was finally finished and very, very happy with the interior design of this house. But then I was outside and there was no landscaping yet, and I wasn't too happy with the way it looked. But then I got to the landscaping and it helped so much to bring this whole house together and also create this very wholesome vibe that there is on the inside to the outside, this homey, very cluttered, and it all worked together very well with the landscaping. And as I said in the beginning, I really wanted to play with terrain tools, and because the grandparents had a little bit of a farm before, I knew exactly that I wanted to have some farmland, but I also had so many hanging plants left. And because of all these hanging plants, I decided to make a greenhouse. But it turned out when I scrolled to debug that I found a different option and didn't use the hanging plants in the greenhouse. But I still did build a greenhouse, and I think it turned out very cute. And where all of the hanging plants, not all of the hanging plants, I used a lot of them in the house, so I didn't totally cheat, but a lot of them are hanging down this super cute debug item with these cherry blossom trees. And now this kind of arches over the fields that they have, and maybe they also use these hanging plants to plant something that they can't in the fields. Maybe it needs a different kind of ground, so they have all of these plants in the hanging plants. But I also think that if you don't put fields under there, but you rather put something like a wedding venue, this could also be very, very sweet and a very nice place to get married underneath this. I think it looks very pretty with these cherry blossom trees and the hanging plants hanging from underneath there, so hopefully you don't think I cheated with that. Oh yeah, and also for the landscaping, I was scrolling a lot through debug, and there I found these yarny statues that aren't plushies, but they have that little bit of a log next to them, and these hadn't shown up when I placed all of my items in preparation for this I use every item in Nifty Knitting thing. And so I was basically finished, and then I had a whole another row of items that I had to incorporate somehow, but the inside was already so cluttered that I tried to hide all of these little yarnies in different colors in the backyard area. So if you happen to download this house, you can find the one or the other yarny surprise in the backyard. So I want to thank you very, very much for watching. I know that I did a lot of personal rambling on, so I hope it was still entertaining and enjoyable. And yeah, I hope you liked and enjoyed this video. If you would consider subscribing, you would make me super duper happy, and I hope we'll see each other again.